But social graces are the job search. How do you fill strangers with confidence and trust so that they're willing to risk their own social capital to advocate for you? And I realized,
You
wow,
need to say that again slower. That's really good. Okay, like let's rewind and go a little bit slower.
How do you fill strangers with trust and confidence to advocate for you? It's fundamentally an irrational behavior. Why would you do that for anyone, let alone a stranger that you just met? But that is the modern job search in a nutshell. There is no scarcity of applicants. There's an overwhelming glut of them. So you need to get a human being to say your name to another human being. That's the shortcut of the modern job search. It feels not very much like a shortcut because it takes time, effort, and training. And that's training. That is the gap that I fill in this space. I don't provide tips. I provide only instructions.
The idea of job security is outdated as a landline. If you haven't been in a search for a while, it's probable you will at some point, by choice or not. Most executives admit to staying way too long or sense what's coming and justify staying anyway. Here, there's another reason. The faulty belief that navigating to what's next will inevitably be worse and has to suck. Screw that. Lauren Greif has spent a lifetime in corporate and executive search, calling bullshit on stale career advice that most still use. This is Career Blast in a Half, the career podcast for executives ready to cut past outdated career advice to fuel your outcomes now. So let's go.
Do you ever have like a new work person that you just think is the bomb.com? I do. And you get to meet him today. His name is Steve Dalton. And I had heard about the infamous Steve Dalton. But then what ended up happening is I fell onto an article on Harvard Business Review. And it was all about what's missing from our thank yous. Why don't thank yous really work? How could they work better? What is the pathway that is actually going to do something with my thank you or not? Right. And so then I started getting hooked and I actually created a little carousel and then I got his books. So if you're watching on video, here I am, 2-hour job search. And my other one, the job closer, is at home. So work and home. I've got them everywhere. Steve, thank you so much for coming on the show today. And tell us a little bit about how you became maybe even quasi-obsessed with thank yous and follow-ups. I mean, it's not like something that most people really, dive deeply into.
Sure. Thank you for having me first and foremost. For me, I started my career as a chemical engineer, which is not a typical leaping off point for career coaches. But it makes a lot of sense when you think about it from a chemical engineer's perspective. A lot of career coaching during my life had been presented to me in the form of tips, like sell yourself and put yourself out there. I don't know how many chemical engineers you know, but watching a chemical engineer sell themselves or put themselves out there, on average, not the most pleasant experience. Charm is not one of our core classes. So that tip-oriented instruction never really worked for me, and more broadly for social graces in general. But social graces are the job search. How do you fill strangers with confidence and trust so that they're willing to risk their own social capital to advocate for you? And I realized, wow,
you need to say that again slower. That's really good. Okay, like let's rewind and go a little bit slower.
How do you fill strangers with trust and confidence to advocate for you? It's fundamentally an irrational behavior. Why would you do that for anyone, let alone a stranger that you just met? But that is the modern job search in a nutshell. There is no scarcity of applicants. There's an overwhelming glut of them. So you need to get a human being to say your name to another human being. That's the shortcut of the modern job search. It feels not very much like a shortcut because it takes time, effort, and training. And that's training. That is the gap that I fill in this space. I don't provide tips. I provide only instructions. And that extends to minutia like thank you notes that aren't actually minutia at all. They're the start of a long game of building trust and confidence with strangers when managed optimally. I think if you can optimize something a little, you can optimize it a lot. And thank you notes is no exception. It's a perfect embodiment of the rule.
So, will you train us today on this show to be able to actually do this more effectively? Because if you had to put like some kind of adhesive label on top of what most thank yous do and where this training session on our podcast is going to go, what's the before and after?
I think the before is it's the before is a split between not expressing gratitude at all, which is the worst case, and the roll your eyes formality of I need to send a thank you note. And the after is using a thank you note as a strategic leaping off point to a lasting relationship with who is right now a total stranger.
So I want to raise my hand and a lot of red flags here to address this uncomfortable truth, right? What I'm not surprised, right? But it is surprising. Maybe I should say, like, I'm not shocked, but it's still surprising. What amount, approximately percentage of people actually send a thank you note? And then I want to know, of the people that send them, what typically happens with that thank you note?
I can't give you an estimate on what percent of people send thank you notes. I can only go by the fact that there are consistently people surprised in my audiences to hear that sending a thank you note is not just the right thing to do, it's also incredibly beneficial to the job seeker themselves. So the fact that there's always a population in the audience, not just one or two people, but a chunk of the audience that is genuinely surprised leads me to believe it happens a lot. Also, the frequency with which I hear potential mentors remark on the fact that they rarely get thank you notes leads me to believe it's happening a lot. So I think it's hard for me to put a percentage on it, but it is more than a little and not quite all the time, somewhere in the middle there. What was the other part of your question?
Of those who actually do send them, what typically happens to them? Like, do they go into thank you heaven? Do they land? Like, where do they go? What do they do? How effective are they?
From the job seeker perspective, the thank you notes that are typically sent when you are not trained to send an advantageous thank you note tend to be vapid and surface level. Thank you very much for talking today. I found your insights incredible. So it's going to be pretty basic. It would be something that you could copy and paste and send to anybody. And that means it's an ineffective thank you note because the person looking at that email a month from now, if your name were removed, they would not remember who you were. And if they talk to a lot of people, people start to run together. So the fact that there is nothing specific, bespoke, personalized about it makes it problematic. From the receiver's end, the thank you note, you don't know how it's going to be used. So therefore, you need to make it durable enough to be portable, meaning you don't know if this is going to be forwarded to a potential hiring manager. For me, whenever I got thank you notes, because I don't remember names or faces very well, I tucked them into a folder called thank yous, so that when the hiring manager at the larger companies that I worked at asked me who they should consider for interviews, I would just go back to my thank you note folder and jog my memory. Oh, these are the people that I spoke to. Of these, I liked these handful best. But when people made it easy for me to remember them, that helped a lot. The key, though, is that it was an electronic receipt that this person had made the effort. I wasn't going to remember that person unprompted. I needed to have an electronic record to jog my memory. So if you want to be remembered at all, you've got to send the thank you note just as an electronic receipt to the person you spoke to that conversation took place.
Okay. So you've just established what thank you notes do and don't do, right? Now you're not remembered. Now if you are remembered, it's a generic reminder. Now it's just like you're just, and I say this sadly a lot, you are just a commodity. You are not building that bespoke next step. And I really appreciate that. Now, train us. So train us, walk us through the first piece of this thank you note and tell us why, if you can, at each phase, why this matters. Because if I hear it and I know, for example, like I'm not going to be remembered, I'm like, yikes, I don't want to run into that consequence. So I would love for you to do kind of like this, I guess you could say X-ray or autopsy of a thank you note.
So there are three elements, and this is called a 3-part thank you note or a 3TY.
3TY.
Yeah.
We
the
need
first part
t-shirts.
the first part is table stakes. If everyone were erring on the side of sending meh thank you notes, I wouldn't need to write an article about thank you notes. Honestly, it's the thought that counts. It's the effort. It's the electronic receipt. That's 80% of the benefit right there. But people don't send it. I think because people get overwhelmed, like the thank you note, maybe they forget that a thank you note is advantageous to them, or they think that they need to send handwritten thank you notes because that conventional wisdom refuses to die, even though it's not everybody's style. Yet it requires resources like time, effort, and money that not everybody has, whereas an email thank you note is free. So first part, express gratitude. That is the basic element. Let them know they've been seen and heard. I really appreciate you taking the time. It is the least you can do. If they were spending that hour that they spoke to you or that 30 minutes consulting, that would have been hundreds and hundreds of dollars for them. They instead chose to forego those hundreds and hundreds of dollars to talk to you for free. The least you could do is send a thank you note. Thank you note. So express gratitude, part 1. Part 2, and this is where we start laying the groundwork for an ongoing relationship, is we want to highlight the best piece of advice or insight that they shared during the meeting. So this is where you differentiate yourself from people who just give a generic thank you in a forgettable way that could have been copied and pasted to everyone they spoke to that week. The reason we do this is, again, it's just as selfish as it is altruistic. Altruistically, it lets them know they've been seen and heard. What they said made a difference to you. It didn't just go in one ear and out the other. Selfishly, to you, it starts laying the groundwork for your follow-up. So the best piece of advice or insight gives you something you can work from so that when you check in with them a month from now, you don't just say, hey, checking in, how are you doing? You're saying, hey, by the way, thanks again for your time last month. Since we last spoke, I've been taking action. I've been digging deeper into that topic that you recommended. I've signed up for that newsletter that you suggested. And here's why I'm a better version of myself than I was before I met you. So it's one thing to have someone acknowledge that you gave them advice. It is another thing to have that person act on the advice and then report back to you the positive results they enjoyed because of it.
Okay, so I want to just put this on pause for 1 minute, because what you just said is definitely a mic drop moment. And I will also reiterate this in a little bit of a different way as I say this, right? If you ask me for X, Y, and Z, and then I give it to you, and then you don't follow up, now I'm thinking either this person doesn't want to be helped, I just wasted my time because I gave them the best of what I've got, right? I'm not like going to pull out a white rabbit and go, oh, and here's my real advice, right? I'm giving you everything that I've got. And it also will say to me that I'm not going to do it again because you didn't follow up the first time. So now I have a little bit of trust erosion, right? Now I'm like, well, I just offered this person everything that they could ever ask for with respect to this question. And it was kind of like, that's not good enough. Right? That's kind of the way it feels. And so you get to, and correct me, you get to differentiate not just from the thank you note, differentiate from the action and the follow-up that you are essentially validating at this point of the thank you note.
Yes, it is a meta exercise. What you do in this instance is a projection or a prediction of what you'll do if that person were to hand you off to a referral, which is really what you're trying to get to, because when they hand you off to another human being, that person doesn't know you as a stranger. Their guard doesn't start in the up position. They know you as a friend of their colleagues. Their guard is down, and that is a beautiful thing. But if you're worried that the person's not going to follow through on that referral you make, maybe they never reach out, maybe they reach out and never send a thank you note. All of those things cause us pause, and we go back into self-preservation mode of like, is it really worth it to burn my social capital for this person who didn't even say thank you for the help that I'd given them previously?
Yeah.
So it's important that we not just listen and write down what they say, but execute. And you can only really do that in a predictable way when you acknowledge that in your thank you note. Otherwise, you will forget, they will forget. It's just an easy way to capture that builds the groundwork for a lasting relationship.
I love this so much because it sounds so simple, right? Just follow through on what they suggested. Get the book, listen to the podcast, whatever it is, write a review, do all the things. And that immediately speaks to your integrity. It also makes them feel, like I don't have to, you said burn your social capital, but I also think that it could be even before that, which is I'm going to carve out the time and actually do this, right? Because if it's easy for you to forget to follow through, it is easy for them to, because there's no skin in the game for them. They're not benefiting. This is an ask that you have made, right? This is, at your request, they're putting themselves out there. You have something, they have something you want. And now in order to do that, they're not just going to, put their hide out there or carve out their busy day just to, make that right if you're not meeting them halfway. I am blowing the lid off of our best kept secret, our 30-day blast program. Yeah, you heard it. 30 days. We have seen so much success for this program that past clients have landed in that 30 days and increased their compensation 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, over 100%. Now, not everybody lands and earns that much in 30 days, but my point is it prepares you. And in 30 days, if you're not out of there with a changed mindset and changed clear and simple ways to be able to navigate the market this year, then we'll gladly refund your misery and you can go back to applying now. Check out the link below for the next 30-day blast, and we would love to have you there.
I do think people sometimes let perfect be the enemy of the good. I think they think there's so much conventional wisdom out there. The handwritten thank you notes are a way to differentiate yourself. Again, they take time, effort, and money. They're not everybody's style. They're slow to arrive. We don't have a filing system for hard copy notes of appreciation the way we do email. So even if you send a handwritten one, you'd still want to send an email thank you note. I would say it doesn't exempt you from an email thank you note, which gets there faster, and et cetera, et cetera. But I think people then also think, well, I've got to prove myself of value to this person. I've got to send them a link to an article that they'd find interesting, which now we're forcing ourselves to inauthentically do research to find an article that not only gives them more work to do, but suggests that they need to get better at their job. But it's sexy conventional wisdom that people will tell you to do, when in reality, we don't need to hit grand slams on this. We just need to bat singles. So that's where the third piece of the thank you note comes in. And that is to ask if it's okay if you ask additional questions. So is it okay if we keep in touch? Is it okay if I appreciate your time. I'm going to take the weekend to reflect. Is it okay if I reach back out to you with any additional questions I might have? The benefit of this and everything that I teach in the 2-hour job search and the job closer is backed in research, and this is no exception. This is based on a psychologist named Robert Cialdini. He is a Stanford professor. He wrote in his book Influence about a concept called commitment and consistency. And in this concept, he found that if he as experimenter would ask a bystander on a beach to watch their beach-going things, their blanket, their radio, it made it far more likely that bystander would intervene when they staged a theft of the radio. So the intervention rate went from 20% to 95% by making one small request, and that is, will you watch my things? It was not paying them to watch the stuff. It was not becoming friends with them. It was a simple request. And you will see you'll hear salespeople do this to you when you walk into a mattress store or you're shopping for automobiles. They will ask if they can keep in touch with you, if they can follow up and see how your search process is going. And the reason they do this is because it makes it far more likely that you will take their calls when they do inevitably follow up on you, because they have great systems for this, because they know the power of commitment and consistency. So it's a non-threatening request that gets them to engage with your thank you note, deepening the relationship, but it also increases the odds that they will engage with you once you update them a few weeks later with an update on how you've benefited as a candidate because of the kindness of their and sharpness of their insight and advice. So we're laying the groundwork for our follow-up weeks from now, just with a couple of simple tactics in our 3-part thank you.
Number 1 of the thank you is gratitude. Number 2 is bespoke insight. And number 3 is to make the ask, not for a referral, but to ask for additional questions or some other follow-up after you have completed the commitment that came from whatever came out of that conversation. Did I miss anything?
Nope, you're absolutely right. And You might be thinking, when do I ask for a referral? The thank you note is part of a much bigger ecosystem.
Right.
In the 2-hour job search, that basically gives exact research-backed instructions for getting that first interview. And the only predictable way to get that first interview is to turn a stranger into an advocate and have them mention your name to another human being. So a referral can mean a lot of different things. Apply through this link. Also called a referral, not nearly as helpful as having one human say your name to another human being in your function of choice. So if you are looking for a referral, it should not come in your thank you note. Your gratitude should stand alone from that request. When and how you make that request is deeper inside baseball and is the end of a much longer, more thoughtful process on turning strangers into advocates systematically, as outlined in the 2-hour job search.
I am so glad that you also made that clear, because one of my next questions is going to be, okay, so now you followed up, right? Now you've exercised your ask. You tell me to read this, I do this, and then what, right? And what you're also saying is, yes, it is a cascading effect, right? One thing leads to another, and I think very important, the thank you should stand alone, solo. And the reason for that is why?
When your thank you note is combined with a request for a referral, it can feel like an empty or hollow experience to the person who just shared their time and insight with you for a number of reasons. First, they may think that it was all a scam, a plan from the beginning. They knew from the moment they
You had
reached out to you that
ulterior
they were going to
motives,
upsell you.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. Like it wasn't really a real thank you, because it was just a lure for you to get what you want.
Absolutely. So it could be seen as an inauthentic request for knowledge and insight. It was all just a setup to try to upsell you. Secondly, it can make this person feel like they weren't good enough for you. Like they just shared their insight with you, and now you want to go talk to somebody else, like before you even got your thank you note out. Like that's not a great feeling. I'd like to see some thoughtfulness in there. Those are the two big downsides with combining your gratitude with your request for more stuff. Asking if it's okay to keep in touch, it leverages the benefits of Cialdini's commitment and consistency without upselling the reader of that email, the person who did the informational meeting with you, to a more significant request. So that's fine standing alone. It's just a way to get them to engage with you by asking it as a question. They'll write you back, which means when you ask for a referral a week later, and the way that I teach in the 2-hour job search, it's part of a broader ecosystem called the harvest cycle, that they've already had a few back and forths with you. It feels like a relationship. This is an ongoing conversation. But the two big mistakes, or the two reasons why not to combine a request for a referral with gratitude, is that it can make people feel like they weren't good enough, and it can make it all feel like it was a setup from the start.
So I'm imagining listeners going, oh, geez, Steve, come on. This sounds like a lot of work. Like, how come this is so orchestrated? Like, can't I just send a thank you note and ask for a referral? Like, why do I need to go through this engineering process and do this? And I guess what I'm also posing to you is, in many of our clients, right? These are high stake positions. And I also, I'm sure you the same. I think you don't do anything. Like, why even do this? Like, are they even reading them? Right. Mm-hmm. And so I'd love to hear from your perspective, why this system is not only so effective, but equally important is what will change for you, job seeker, when you do this in a more deliberate fashion.
Certainly. So why is this effective? Absolutely right. You don't know if everybody that receives a thank you note will care, but there are people who care a lot, and in one's absence, that is a deal breaker for some. If they can't trust you to express gratitude to them, how can they trust you to express gratitude to someone else that they had to burn social capital to connect to you with? That is jarring. Secondly, it is the electronic receipt, as we established before. It helps you remember them. It makes this more like a conversation. So when you hit them back up in a week, saying, upon reflection, this is definitely something I'd like to pursue further. How would you go about doing that if you were me? For example, can you recommend someone I should speak to next? Now, okay, you took the weekend to reflect. There was a delay between your gratitude. To me, the gratitude ends the transaction where you request their time and insight. When you come back a week later and you ask for further assistance, and further is left vague on purpose, that's the start of a new transaction. But you have a relationship with them that goes back and forth of half a dozen touch points between requesting the informational and expressing gratitude for that. I would challenge the hypothetical pushback that this is a lot of work. I think it's actually less work when you have a fill in the blank framework than to do it from scratch. You don't feel that perfect is the enemy of the good temptation anymore of I need to make this really memorable and I need to handwrite it and I also need to send a gift and I need to locate an article. Like, no, you just need to express gratitude, highlight the best piece of advice they gave you, and ask if it's okay if you keep in touch. Not much changes in these except the best piece of information they shared with you. That's it. Otherwise, these are copy and paste jobs, and that's totally fine. You have a harder job search than your grandparents did. Your grandparents just had to print out resumes on nice paper at Kinko's and mail them off. You don't have to do that, but you have to manage social media. That's all. You just have to do LinkedIn. That's it. You just have to network with strangers in a way that your grandparents didn't. They just had to network with their neighbors and family members because there was geographical protection for employment in a way that there is not anymore. So you've got to save time on the more routine steps and do them well. But having a formula will save you time. It will not cost you time. I think the one point I'd close with here is everybody listening, are you 100% sure you've sent thank you notes for 100% of the favors you've gotten in the last 6 months? Can you answer that with 100% certainty? And I believe we are not as quick to say yes as I think we'd all like to be. I think right now it feels like leaky bucket. What are all the favors I've gotten? Do I have a system for this? That is why an engineering mindset is so important. There is nothing more important than to be able to provide for yourself and your loved ones. And that means you can't leave it to chance. You've got to be airtight in everything that you do with it. That doesn't mean it needs to be intensively effortful. It just means you need to have a system you trust.
So I'm going to share my recommendation for turnaround for thank you notes, and I want you to feel free to chime in. First of all, I am a firm believer there's never a bad time or too late for a thank you note. So if you haven't answered, yes, I've done it 100%, you are still in good standing. Do it now. And you do not have to grovel or anything like that. All it is I realized, you know what? I forgot to thank you for blah, 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 right? Just be human. You don't have to please. And in fact, do not get like, and I'm so sorry, because that's like over the top.
Yeah. They've forgotten about you.
Right. They've already forgotten about you. The best practice also, I do steer for 24 hours, right? So I hear that it should be 24 hours after an interview, networking conversation, any exchange that has, future potential opportunity, you want to develop. Because again, the response time echoes a lot of what you were talking about with the consistency and commitment, right? You're also making it so helpful to the person on the other end. It just is a nice way of keeping that relationship warm. And I think that, we hear that, I'm sure you do too, right? My network is atrophied. They've gone cold because they haven't been touched. So why would you start off a new relationship freezing them out, right? Mm-hmm. Steve, Dalton, I did not know this about your engineering background, but now it's all crystal clear. You are such a gift, and I'm so appreciative to have you here today and to be, a newer friend for you, and excited for all this work. I know you've been in a very intense writing period. So welcome back. We're happy and thrilled to have you. And please, everybody, links are below, both for Steve's books, both of them. Also, I'm going to include his HBR article. I do not miss his link for LinkedIn, so you can blow him up and tell him that you heard this on the podcast. And of course, if you've enjoyed this episode, please do us a solid. This would be a great thank you. This would be such a great thank you. Please write us an Apple Podcast review. This show is like a true labor of love to be able to dispel a lot of the bogus information that comes out about careers and jobs. So we're telling it like it is in the best of ways for you. That thank you would mean the world to us. So have a great rest of your day, everybody, and thanks for listening.
Thank you for joining today. We appreciate your listening ears. Big time. We ask this: use these tools, not tomorrow, right now, and share them by spreading the love, leaving us a rating and subscribe so you don't miss the next career blast in a half. Most of all, thank you for you.